And this first session this morning, I'm going to be joined by three leaders who are going to really take us into the trenches about how to take transformation beyond the pilot phase, right, to full impact. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the three of them, and then they're going to come out and join us. Banwari Agarwal is the CEO of banking, insurance, retail, manufacturing, travel, and logistics. It's a big job. At Sutherland, Sutherland serves as a digital transformation partner for iconic brands worldwide. Nag Bandaru is president and managing partner of enterprise funding for Wipro, which many of you know offers global clients forward-looking solutions for enterprise transformation. Nag is also a member of Wipro's executive committee. And Michael Neves is executive vice president and head of cloud for the Americas for Capgemini. Michael helps Fortune 500 companies and clients move beyond incremental change to embrace full future-ready strategies. So please join me in welcoming Banwari, Michael, and Nag. Thanks. Come on, settle in.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for doing this today. Now, this group has been listening to a lot of really detailed and important analysis, but we're going to get into some real specifics with you three. So thanks for playing this game with us this morning. You think they're ready? All right. Michael, I want to start with you. You talked to me about some studies about the high failure rate in AI transformation, and you pointed to challenges that you call blockers and dragons. Can you explain that, what blockers and dragons are?
Sure. So any transformation comes with, it's a multivariate problem. There are a lot of impediments, and I like to refer to them as dragons. Where are the dragons? Find them and slay them. If we're going to talk about AI innovation and resilience, I think we have to start with the dragon that was called out just a few weeks ago. There was an MIT study that created quite a dust-up. And the headline that went around social media was that 95% of AI pilots fail. And it was jarring. Like, wow, okay, that's a bold statement coming from MIT. And paid to get behind the paywall, read the reports, and had a few realizations I'll share with you for a moment. So first of all, that's not what it said. That was a headline that entered social media. What it really was saying was that 95% of AI pilots fail to meet profitability or to scale. I'm like, okay, that's a different statement. Let me take a closer look. First, I looked at the profitability piece, and their rate of return, a positive P&L effect, was 6 months. I'm like, okay, hang on. How often do we get that fast of a positive P&L impact based on a complex technology deployment? So that started to hint that maybe there's some differences of viewing the problem. The other one was scale, and that's what I found interesting. That was the dragon that I think we'll probably talk a bit about today. Was the way they called it out was inability to scale because of either learning gaps or failure to integrate with business processes or data flows. That's a different problem. And I think that is probably the most important nugget of information, of insight in that report that wasn't making social media, that said, it was a cautionary tale that said to go from AI to profit, to go from garage to factory, requires a different way of thinking. It's not just put it in the cloud and use more of it. It's going to require more sophistication. So that's the dragon that I tend to lead with or be mindful of, that we need to be careful on how we address and how we slay.
Yeah. So Banwari, when you're trying to slay dragons in your business and for your clients, you talk to me about AI being this must conversation, right? Now there are concerns that sort of some of the AI tools aren't quite up to some of the promise of them yet. What makes AI, what makes it a must conversation now, and how does that conversation go?
Yeah. No, it's and continuing with what Michael talked about, if you think about Sutherland, really, in general, right? One of the things we say, Michael, to continue your point, that the enterprises don't have an innovation problem, right? They have a scale problem, if I think about, right? And we think about 5 key components which helps to clear up those scaling issues, and of course, make sure that we are delivering, measurable business outcomes actually. So we think about commitment really, and I call it 5 C's actually from our perspective. So first is, we call it commitment. Most of the time you think about this project starts as a technology curiosity rather than a commitment from the business, commitment from the process really. And we believe that that's where it should start, that the business owners and process owners has a commitment to make it a success. Second thing we talk about is clarity. It's unless you have a clarity on the process itself, applying technology, AI, is not gonna get you the required results because it's a broken process, eventually gonna get to a broken answer really. Third we say is a clear data, right? And you think about data today, most of the AI failures are not AI failures, they are data failures because harmonized governed data is the real fuel behind the success of AI projects. And the fourth, which is very important part we say, is the commercials. Because most of the time we are running behind technology versus really aligning on what's the outcome which is business is looking at really. And if we can align on the commercial models, I think it starts to work out. And then the last is the change management, which is often ignored part of it really. And we think that if you take care of that, with these 5 things, you can start to get AI at the right place and make the conversation right really.
Naga, as I'm listening to the other 2 gentlemen talk about sort of scale, I keep thinking that, when you're trying to do a transformation at scale, it's like trying to, retrofit a plane while it's flying, right? I mean, you've got a lot of things that are going along. Can you do that and maintain stability? Or do you have to sort of accept that, like, there's gonna be turbulence, and we just have to figure out how to manage the instability that comes with it?
Yeah, we all have lived software for what now, 60, 70 years, starting with IBM mainframe to client server to mobile, digital, etc. At every cusp of change, the organization has to live with the change. You can't say, oh, I'm going to have stability in the organization. The challenge I find is that processes are always broken and data is always unclean. If you have broken processes and data, unclean data, you can't create intelligence. So any system, whether it is an ERP, whether it is a mainframe, you got to, what I call, make it work. It is not like IKEA, you take it, put it in the shelf, This is really, you got to cook and make it happen. So I think the challenge is people in today's world expect, what do you call, a Uber style, I need the car, I need to take a ride the way I did this morning.
Click the button and it's done.
AI is like starting with a nut and bolt of building an automobile. And then you can drive. And people don't have the patience, so they get frustrated. And here you are, cloud service providers and semiconductors. They want consumption, so they are driving very, very fast. And service providers who are systems integrators are saying, wait a minute, let's take it step by step. And people don't have the time to take it step by step because the board wants return on investment. So, I was in Middle East, and one of the service providers told me, hey, I bought $100 million worth of GPUs. Tell me what to do with it. I said, take your time. So it is important that you take your time and be patient, because some of these require a lot of patient implementation, understanding the problem and getting the ROI. You can't get the ROI just by taking a very quick fix approach. So that's my view.
Yeah. Michael, when you and I talked about this, you talked a fair amount about sort of the culture of an organization and its impact on these changes. You told me that one CEO said to you, culture is yogurt, which you did not necessarily agree with. Can you explain that? Maybe give us some examples.
Sure,
I know you
sure.
talked about something with PwC and.
I think if we agree that AI adoption is a transformation, then we have to execute it as such. What does that mean? Well, if we look at the last 50 years of transformation, I don't even care what flavor it is, 4 out of 5 fail to meet their financial and strategic objectives, 80%. That should be a daunting reminder. It's not that it can't be done, but it's a signal that this is dangerous stuff. It's high-risk work. It's not that it's not worth doing, but it needs to be treated with the right respect. The first form of respect is, well, why does that statistic exist? And if we look at the reasons, they're actually very common. One of the ones that tends to stand out, ironically, is culture. Because we're talking about technology. Culture is a soft thing. And when I had a similar discussion with a COO of a very large financial institution, he was very dismissive about it and said, culture is for yogurt, and just ignored the elements. And a year later, the transformation was failed, and he was no longer with the company. So sort of I was the harbinger cautioning him. So as we look at AI, I'm reminded of that's another dragon. How are we addressing culture? I'll give you an insidious version of this. I won't name the client, but this is public information. A very, very large and prominent QSR, hamburgers and fries, adopted AI for their drive-thrus. Now they recognized the culture was very important for their franchisees, for adoption. It was a very distributed type of organization, but they ignored the culture of their customers in terms of how were the customers going to react to this. And so small things started to happen as a consequence of drive-through AI adoption, such as pickles on your ice cream. That in turn started to make it on social media, which gave rise to sort of a revolt around this AI adoption, and the project was shelved and is yet to pick up, and it's been easily a year and a half since it was tabled. Some are more smaller examples. PwC deployed a Gen AI assistant. Utilization was very low. Now, PwC is a very risk-averse organization. So it wasn't until they instituted legal protocols, guidelines, and performance metrics around it that utilization began to creep up. Again, all soft stuff. Very little to do with the technological prowess or the features of AI, but it was about getting permission. And sometimes I use that turn of phrase. I said, culture is about getting permission. If you address culture, you have a better chance of getting it.
Nag, I wanted to ask you about the sort of the potential of AI, which people talk about a lot and we don't necessarily get specifics about. We were talking yesterday about sort of life sciences, the life sciences area. And can you give us sort of a specific example of how AI might help address I don't know, the uneven distribution of care or, random costly process for drug development? Like what is the promise and how far are we from it?
One thing we all have to be careful is Medicare, we're all aging, and the denial is by the algorithm. So whatever claims you're putting to all this United Healthcare or whoever is it, they're being done by algorithms today, so you got to have a human to check whether you're conforming to the policy or not. So coming back, this is the first time I heard that Alzheimer's is caused not in the brain, but in kidneys. And AI discovered that the cause of Alzheimer's is because of the kidneys and not because of the brain. So, some of these discoveries today you're seeing are largely due to the way the COVID vaccine that Moderna and everybody launched is because of the integration of biology, chemistry, and AI. And they were able to launch the drug in 18 months, whereas polio vaccine took 18 years. So it is important that there is a humongous opportunity for people to use intelligence to transform, whether it is customer, whether it is like to discover a drug, it takes so many proteins, molecules to be matched. So just the regulatory reporting, you have to go through several countries' regulatory research to launch a drug discovery today. And it takes humongous amount of time for any R&D organization in life sciences to first of all go through all the regulatory research. So, companies like Wipro launched a product called TaloSafe, which browses almost 80 countries' regulatory research and can give to you in about 2 months what are the patent violations you can do so that you can invest in the right fashion the drug discovery project. So, there are multiple opportunities. Like I said, this is about innovation and resilience at scale. You got to be patient. You got to plan the project in such a fashion that you get an exponential benefit. I'll just give you an example. We have an Affordable Care Act platform right now, and which we acquired, and we have been we have a 30% market share today in the ACA Medicare and Medicaid business. One of the challenges we have at every open enrollment, we hire at least 600 to 700 contractors because there are a lot of people who are calling saying this is what we want to do for open enrollment. Today, on NVIDIA Stack, we built a platform where we eliminated 400 people calling directly. The way you're speaking, the AI is able to speak today. But it required 2 years of investment. This project has been launched about 2 years ago. We just went live this year, and it took one customer to embrace it after 2 years, and they reaped enormous benefits. So my request is that you got to be patient. You got to build exponential benefits to the customer if you want to get it rewarded, and the customer will see the benefits. Technology always has been a harbinger for business change. I keep going back to Airbnb or Uber. These are disruptions in industry, and we can make an enormous disruption to our customer business if we do the right business idea, take it to scale, and make it work. And my belief is that that is the way to do it, and the way we are looking at is to put one bot, put one conversational AI assistant and say we have done AI. It is not the way.
Banwari, you talked to me about bringing AI into the real world playbook, and you've been confident enough about impactful AI execution to sort of focus Sutherland on outcome-based pricing, that you can deliver all of the promise of what AI is or help your customers. Isn't that risky?
I won't say it's risky, right? Because I think, let me step back and say, right? We always generally you think about, and we have a lot of audience who is running large IT services or operations businesses in their organizations. And if you think about, generally, if you think about the work we do is in a cost model, FTE models, right? And we think about, most of our relations are all about, hey, can we reduce the cost by 30%? Can we, and generally that's the conversation is centered. And I think moving from that conversation to a conversation about outcomes, conversation about top line, conversation about P&L, conversation about PSAT is difficult. It's a difficult conversation because cost is easy to manage. You can manage at every level. Defining business outcomes itself is a challenge, right? Because, and it's different at different level the way you look at it. Sometimes business outcomes for an organization, our organizations are not built for processes, right? So sometimes you look at a business outcome on a process, it spans multiple departments. So you have to align, bring multiple stakeholders. So it's a difficult process, right? But I think if you have a clarity on the process, to the point Nag was saying, right, that technology is a harbinger for business change. If you have a clarity on process, if you have a clarity on outcomes you are looking at, I think that conversation can happen. Let me give you an example. Last year, we were working with one of the leading online furniture and home goods company. Without saying the name, I have to put it out really, right? And you think about, they were struggling in their business operations because supply chain cost issues going up, customer spend going down on furnitures and all of that, the operations cost going up, legacy technologies, right? These are real problems we all deal with every day, actually, in day-to-day, right? And they have been working with, some of the legacy providers who has done for several years no innovation, no change, no outcomes, really. We worked with them on taking, again, going back to the scale point, we worked with them on one area. We said, okay, we're gonna look at order management and do a pilot on that, really. And the idea was, all right, how do you improve cost per order? How do you improve, perfect order rate? How do you improve PC SAT metrics, right? And these are true outcomes which will improve truly their top line and bottom line, actually. We did that, we engaged Sutherland Labs, did end-to-end process engineering, customer journey work, came out with where the processes are broken, actually, because it's a broken process, it's broken data. We looked at all of that, applied technology to that, which includes AI, of course, automation technologies, and fixing their legacy platforms. And improvement was 30% in their cost per order, and PCSAT going up to 95%. And then we took that and scaled it to other areas, fulfillment, their supply chain.
So the pilot leads to the scale.
Exactly.
If it's applied that way.
It is, exactly. And the whole idea was in the pilot, if you have a clarity on the process and clarity on outcome both of you are looking at, then I don't think it's a risk. But if you're right, it's a risk to go to outcome if you don't understand, if you don't have a process clarity, if both of you are not aligned on what outcomes are you looking at, and you're just going, eyes closed and signing, then of course it's a risk, really. Right?
I mean, we had a speaker here yesterday, a chief procurement officer, who was basically pushing back and was basically saying, like, you need to invest, you as a vendor need to invest in our transformation. Like, we're not gonna pay you, you have to partner with us. I don't know, Nag, you're nodding. Like, are you hearing sort of changing relationships between?
Yeah, there are customers who come and tell us that here are the co-pilots, give me 100% cost out. That's a very, what do you call, a very brutal commercial discussion.
Yes.
But there are customers who will say, hey, let's sit down, walk through some projects, and make it real across the organization. So you see both sides, because thanks to what's going on in economic world, tariffs, etc., people are under tremendous cost pressure. So they think AI is the magic bullet. And productivity rates right now in commercials have gone up suddenly from 30% to almost 70%. And I hope everybody realizes those productivities, and I pray they realize those productivities, because that is what vendors are claiming to get those productivity. So at the end of the day, I feel there will be an equilibrium in this world where reality will set in and hype will surrender. And to me, that the service provider and the organization will have to sit down and say what is real. And I always say that you need to have the honest conversation with the customer. You can never, I would say, market the conversation by saying, oh, I'm better than X or Y or Z, and therefore I'm going to give you 80% productivity. People will realize it very quickly that it is not possible, even though you're signing a 10-year contract.
Yeah, I'm sure
they will come with the change. The same procurement will come with the change saying, do it. There are procurement folks where we are giving tremendous benefits, where we have taken outcome-based contract, and we are taking the benefit because it's a risk-reward model. The customer immediately changes and says, I want to insource it because you're getting too much of benefit. So it is, the reality and the equilibrium will set, according to me, always. We all have been in this business for many years. So we can't market the productivity or market our story so fast that, imaginary things are coming into play.
Yes, the temptation to overpromise, right, and is not going to end up going very well for you.
Yeah, overpromise always underdelivers.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell anybody here. So.
Michael, you talked to me a little bit about the role of an AI factory. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So I keep going back to the word scale, right? It's right on the title of what we have here. A bit of history, recent history. When cloud first emerged, 2008, 2009, there was a bit of a struggle to understand, well, what does this mean? How do I use this? Is it a data center in the sky? Is it, how does it fit within? And we eventually figured it out. And that led us to thinking around, the term just escaped my mind, landing zones, guardrails for networking and security, connecting to CI/CD pipelines. And once we started to understand conceptually what this meant, then we adopted the metaphor of the factory about, okay, this is how we move to the cloud. And then that led to other innovative thinking, and we moved from infrastructure type thinking to more advanced type thinking. I see the same inflection point happening here as we move from pilots and seek to scale. Now, the natural inclination, right, is to focus on acquiring GPUs. And certainly the hyperscalers are doing that and offering them. Even NVIDIA has gotten in on their own hyperscaler strategy to offer it with some value-added services. There's a problem, and I think it's another insidious dragon that's worth calling out. I call it the physics of AI. And I'll give you a couple of examples to bring that to life, but I have a whole list of them. The CPU, we know it's different from a GPU, but a CPU is designed for virtualization. It's designed for multi-tenancy. A GPU is not. GPUs need to talk to each other in a very vast manner, petabytes of data. And not only talk to GPUs in the same rack, but across rows in the data center, and perhaps even across data centers in different continents. We call that east-west traffic. Cloud isn't designed to do that. It's typically north-south, retrieve data for a user, whether it's web or application. So immediately, at the very bottom of the stack, we have a CPU difference. We have data architectural differences. And we have a sensitivity on how AI behaves. It needs data, but it also has to be synchronized. So your pipelines can't be fragile. They have to be robust. If you're in the middle of a 3-day model retraining because you're a telco that wants to see your customer churn, or you're a retailer that's preparing for your next release of market data and how to apply it, you're investing millions, tens of millions in these multi-day, perhaps multi-week runs. You have a script that fails, you have a data pipeline that loses synchronization. You've just lost tens of millions of dollars, and your CFO is asking, why did I spend that when I see no return? It was wasted money. So I give that as a glimpse into the physics of AI. As we scale, the cloud hosting model is not designed to take that on. Cloud taught us where workloads should live. It doesn't teach us how to scale intelligence. And that's the problem statement. How do we scale intelligence? Not how do we move to the cloud? And this problem has been on my mind for a while. And so 2 weeks ago, you may have seen in the news, Google announced a $10 billion deal, 10 with a B, over 6 years with Meta. Meta, who in their own right is a hyperscaler, is investing billions and billions with Google for what? Now, on the surface of the press release, it looked like a cloud hosting deal. It's not. It's what I would term a production capacity deal. It's the realization that Meta cried uncle and said, how do we move out of the garage from the pilots and we need a factory floor to do what we're doing. In other words, there are real problems in enacting AI at scale. How do you do capacity management? If you have different parts of the organization, how do they keep from scheduling their jobs, prioritizing them appropriately, tagging them, things the hyperscaler doesn't do. So there's a body of work that needs to happen between you and the hyperscaler that brings it to life. I refer to it as the AI factory, picking up on the old cloud metaphor. It'll probably take on a different name, but that's what I'm sticking to for the moment. And so to me, this is the current dragon as we move out of the garage that needs to be addressed, because there's quite a few things in the physics of AI that need to be acknowledged and recognized. If Meta recognized it and is now doing something about it, doesn't mean you need to be the same size and investment in order to qualify. The factory can be large, the factory can be small. But you do need certain capabilities in place if you're going to succeed at scale.
So, it sounds like you need to have some sort of a relationship or strategy in engaging with the hyperscalers who may have access to things that you don't have. Like, is there a framework for how you think about what your engagement and interaction with hyperscalers should be?
Yeah. If you think about from an overall implementation of AI at a pilot or a scale, we think about having an entire ecosystem in place, right? And there are different players in the ecosystem. Michael talked about, you have the compute cloud players, right? So you're talking about AWS and GCPs and Oracle now showing up in a big way from yesterday's news. But, these are the players. Then you're talking about AI foundation model companies. You're talking about data and integration players. You're talking about process companies. So you're talking about application companies. So it's the whole ecosystem. And I think the way we operate is we think of ourselves and others sometimes as an orchestrator, actually, right? Because you need an orchestrator where the client is able to get an access of all of this entire ecosystem through us, actually. And we orchestrate that. We bring the right players, whether it's compute players, foundation models, our own technologies, our own IP, and build that at a pilot and then scale. And that's the way we think about going and using the entire ecosystem.
I want to turn this just a little bit, Nag. We had a lot of reference yesterday and discussion about this idea of permacrisis. And I'm curious how much you think AI can be a tool in helping us to address that disruption. Things like tariffs. Like, is AI a reasonable tool, useful tool yet? Like, how do you apply it?
If you look at it, the world today, many countries have different tariffs. And if you take supply chain systems, take an SAP or Oracle or any of the supply chain systems do not include this problem, first of all. Nobody expected that. They thought World Trade Organization is going to create the General Agreement of Trade and Tariffs. Nobody expected that the United States will start negotiating tariffs with each of these countries. And if you look at it, yesterday, India tariffs are again being renegotiated. So we are living in a very dynamic environment from a supply chain perspective, from procurement perspective, from an inventory perspective.
Yeah, you don't know what to rely on, right?
Where to lie. And how do you manage cash in that world? My working capital is the most important thing, and I want to deploy cash to get raw material. And that's where AI can tremendously influence in real time where to buy what material. For example, the shirt I'm wearing, the thread can come from Vietnam, the tailor can sit in Bangladesh, and the design can happen in United States. But all this to put together, the cost of producing a shirt has to be dynamically studied, and maybe there will be better designers in UK. So you got to study dynamically, and to me, the tariffs as well as the trade practices are going to tremendously change, and therefore AI can tremendously help. And so we believe that it's a great opportunity for every service provider to create something dynamically for the customer and protect the trade practices of every enterprise.
You guys have all sort of talked about the potential and the outcomes that you're seeing, but even to get those outcomes, like it's expensive, right? To go through this transition. How do you know how to sort of build what an expected ROI is on an AI transformation that's not just based on cost savings, but based on building a business that you might not even know exists? And I don't know if any of you want to take that on.
There are 3 dimensions to any technology change. One is experience, the second is velocity, and the third is productivity. If you're going to focus only on productivity, this is not a bread earner. It has to be a 3-dimension. Any technology change covers these 3 aspects. Okay, this is basics of software development lifecycle. So I would say you need to focus on all 3: experience, the speed with which you can drive your products and services in a tariff world, and see how you can operationally be strong and create productivity in the enterprise. All 3 are important.
I agree, and if I say it in a different way, I look at that every time you do a technology application, you think in 3 ways, and I think about efficiency, effectiveness, and business outcomes. And I think about, yes, you apply a technology to a problem, and you will get some efficiency. That can be 20, 30, 40%, so you have an ROI bucket A, if you call it. You look at effectiveness and says, all right, yeah, efficiency, I got less people, but am I doing it better, actually? Think about claims processing. Okay, am I doing claims better, or I'm submitting claims faster? And because if I'm doing it from 10 days to 3 days, there is an ROI of reducing a claim cycle from 10 to 3, because that's an effectiveness lever. And that's an ROI for that. And then the third is business outcome. In the same example, I can say, yeah, I reduced 10 people to 3 people. I reduced from 10 days to 5 days. But you know what? There is so much fraud happening in doing these claims that I'm losing $10 million every year to fraud. And because of AI technologies and my right process, now I reduce the fraud to $5 million, and it's only 5. So I have 3 buckets, and says I have an efficiency ROI bucket, I have effectiveness, and I have business outcome bucket, and I combine that, and I look at what's the total ROI for me in that program, actually, and then I scale from there.
I mean, are there I was thinking about your example of sort of the drug discovery, right? That AI can find things that you didn't know were there. And when it's inside your business, it might find opportunities that are also you didn't know were there. But it might also create complications that you didn't necessarily see. I don't know whether, Michael, you have a philosophy about how you think about, how to think about what the ROI is of making these changes.
So we're always a victim to yesterday's mental model, right? And to break through to the next one is part of the human spirit, right? How that happens is often a mystery. But I laughed internally earlier when Oracle was brought up about, they're killing it, frankly, on a lot of areas, particularly cloud and AI enablement. But back to 2008, 2009, you may recall that Larry Ellison called cloud snake oil.
Yes.
Right? Boy, has he come a long way, right? He's leading the way now. So somewhere in there, he had that moment of freeing himself from the mental models of the past and seeing with fresh eyes the art of the possible. And I think that's the point where we're at, where we're still, and this was also mentioned in that MIT report when they talked about learnings, that we were still trying to apply AI to the models of yesterday. The place that I try to keep myself, am I optimizing? Am I cost reduction? I try to say, okay, that's, in a matter of speaking, that's table stakes. But I'm seeking to do what Larry did, is to break myself free from yesterday's mental models and look at it with fresh eyes and say, what is the art of the possible? What is the second order effect that I can trigger here and perhaps do something novel for my organization? And if I spend enough time on that, I'll often find something pretty interesting. And then I'll collaborate with others, and then they'll take it higher. That's the way I tend to, that's the pattern I tend to seek. So I think we're at that point as both commerce and culture in how we start to think about what happens in the new models.
Well, gentlemen, I have to say this has been great. We only have 1 minute left together. So I'm going to ask each of you, if you're talking to the folks in this room, if there's one thing that they should do coming out of this meeting, this gathering at Engage, to sort of help them move along and get them moving in the right direction, what would it be if you each could share one thing?
Reality,
Reality? Just focus on the reality.
correct.
Yeah.
I will say, like a health regime, where you do things every day, start doing that, right? Because the results, to Knox's point, will not show up overnight. In a quarter, you will not make a difference, but if you think about like a health regime, in a year or two, you will start to figure out the winners from the losers, actually, in this race.
So I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing today, which is seeking out new ideas, hearing from panels. I have this habit that my young daughters find annoying of picking up the phone. And I tend to, once a week, call people that I respect, admire, and say, what's going on? What are you thinking? What are you seeing? And often, they'll provoke my thinking with what they're seeing that I would ordinarily not have a view to. And in the course of that discussion, I'm also infecting them. So by the time that phone call's over, my mental models have adopted. I'm smarter. I have a new idea. So given the inflection points that I mentioned, we need to do more of that mass collaboration, that infection of ideas. So whether it's in the organization or out, I have contacts from NVIDIA to the hyperscalers that I call weekly to do this kind of interaction. And it keeps me apprised. Like I know, even though NVIDIA is so successful with their chip making, they have problems on this. They don't have the right tooling. They're struggling in how they help their clients scale. So if NVIDIA is having problems, then I know what the reality is from the fluff, that I understand where the front lines are. And I wouldn't have the privilege of that information. I couldn't share it with you today if I did not maintain that curious posture. So I would encourage you to keep doing exactly what you're doing right now. Seek ideas.
Well, Michael, Nag, Banwari, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.